Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Wow Podcast. I'm your host, Darshawn McAway, and we have a special guest on the line, author Evin Demirel. He's the author of the African American Athletes in Arkansas. Evin, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm all right. I got a little basketball in for lunchtime, so those always help.
That's interesting that you mentioned basketball because one of my questions I was going to ask you, did you play sports?
Yeah, I mean, definitely played a lot of basketball, and some soccer, that kind of thing growing up. But the high school team that I had was so good. I couldn't make the team. We had four guys who on the starting lineup who would eventually go on to become Division I starters, and then one of them is like a 7-time NBA All-Star, and Joe Johnson.
Well, awesome. So what made you want to write about African American athletes out of Arkansas?
Well, it's an anthology, nonfiction narrative stories. So it's kind of a compilation of projects I've been working on for a few years, and half of it's previously published, like in the Democrat Gazette and different the Slate website and those kinds of things. And so I was really intrigued by certain stories involving public history when I was a Democrat Gazette reporter for a few years, and so I tended to kind of write about public history, and then always had a big interest in sports, and the two started kind of coinciding more and more.
What was that aha moment to say, hey, I want to write this specific book? What happened in your life?
Muhammad Ali died in the summer of 2016, and so he's like the most significant. I would say it's not hyperbole to say this is the most significant athlete of the 20th century in terms of cultural influence. And when he died, I said, okay, well, there's a lot of stories there that really have not been told to the extent I feel like they should have been. And what I'm talking about is, if you recall, in Arkansas, and I'm sure other states as well, you had like Ali died, and then here's when Ali was in our state, and then like a little news piece, and then like a short story in the local newspaper. And that happened in Arkansas because he went to Fayetteville, and he was a huge draw. Like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is coming tomorrow to Fayetteville, and Ali was filled Barnhill Arena when he came back in 1969. So there's a little article on that, and then nothing really about the fact that he also went to Little Rock and to Pine Bluff on the same trip. So I thought this is an opportunity to really deep dive into this story. So that was kind of that ended up being the centerpiece and the longest story in the anthology.
So while you were researching this book, did you get a chance to interview some of the athletes in person, or was everything over the phone? Or did you meet any?
I mean, I'm a journalist, so almost all of it's like when I can, it's first person when possible, as reported type of history. But it's a guy from like Ali 69 or back in the 30s, 40s. Then I have to more rely on the newspaper and go to the microfilm in that sense. So I kind of combined the two a lot. But yeah, I mean, there was definitely some phoners with guys like Eddie Miles, who lives in Seattle. He became like a number 4 pick in the NBA draft out of North Little Rock. And then when possible, there was in person. So Nolan Richardson, the great Razorbacks basketball coach, was inducted into the Hall of Fame back in 2014. And I went up to Springfield, Massachusetts, as the only Arkansas-based journalist to cover his induction into the Naismith Hall of Fame. And at the same time, there was a guy named Nat Sweetwater Clifton who was being inducted posthumously. And this guy is originally from Arkansas and goes up to Chicago, becomes part of that great migration. And he was a New York Knick, and he was the first African American to both sign with and play for an NBA team. So he is, you can say, a Jackie Robinson of the NBA. And he'd already died, but I met his daughter and his grandson up there, and it was really kind of moving to be their first person, meeting them in real life and then reporting as they kind of take this honor on behalf of their father.
So if a person who is into sports history wanted to pick this book up, what is something interesting that they'll find out about this book?
I mean, it's just a compendium of different stories. Like, I'll give you an example. Very few people know. I mean, Green Bay Packers, right? Huge dynasty. They begin their push in the 1960s when they win multiple NFL championships, including the first two Super Bowls. Well, that team was fueled by African American Arkansans. They had like 5 on their team. So I kind of look into those guys, Willie Davis from Texarkana, Elijah Pitts from around Mayflower, and a few others, and I kind of weave together their stories and tell how they changed culture in terms of when they went to Green Bay, which had been predominantly white community, and then also with the effect that Green Bay Packers team had on the NFL at large and how it was part of that evolution. So there's stories like that where there's these Arkansans whose influence reverberates well beyond the boundaries of our state.
So can you tell the listeners where they can purchase your book and how they can find you on social media?
Yeah. The easiest thing would just be type in African American athletes in Arkansas on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, .com or whatever. It is at Barnes and Noble physically here in the state of Arkansas, and a few other gift shops and stores have it. If you want a signed copy, like direct to you, you can go to my website. It's heritageofsports.com. And then as far as social media, you can just African American Athletes in Arkansas. It has its own Facebook page. You can just follow me, on Facebook, or I'm on Twitter at Evin Demirel, or Instagram Sports Heritage Evin. So a few ways.
Awesome. Well, you're listening to the Wow Podcast. I'm your host, Darshawn McAway. We just got done talking to author Evin Demirel. Go check out his book. Thank you for listening to the Wow Podcast.